Title: An Adventure in Venice. Part 1. Alex, an architecture student from Germany, traveled to Venice, Italy for a vacation. He had always dreamed of seeing the city's beautiful canals. When he got off the train, he felt the warm, humid air. He went to a small hotel near the Rialto Bridge. After a short rest, Alex decided to explore the city. He walked through narrow streets, admiring the old architecture. The sound of water and boats moving through the canals created a special atmosphere. In one of the small squares, he met an art vendor named Luca. Luca painted pictures of Venice. Alex pointed at one of the paintings and asked, "Where is this bridge?" Part 2. Luca smiled and said, "This is the Accademia Bridge, one of the most famous bridges in Venice." Alex curiously asked, "Is it difficult to find?" Luca shook his head and said, "No, just follow this street, and you'll reach it in a few minutes." Alex thanked Luca and started walking. He passed by small shops, admiring the colorful masks and Murano glass in the windows. Finally, he arrived at the Accademia Bridge. He stood on the bridge and looked at the view of the Grand Canal. Gondolas moved slowly on the water, and the setting sun painted the sky in golden and pink hues. Alex took a picture and thought, "This is the Venice I always wanted to see." Part 3. After enjoying the view, Alex decided to have dinner. He went to a small restaurant by the canal. The waiter smiled and said, "Welcome to dinner. What would you like?" Alex looked at the menu and said, "I want to try an Italian dish. What do you recommend?" The waiter replied, "Seafood risotto is one of Venice's famous dishes." Alex agreed, and soon a plate of food was placed in front of him. The delicious aroma made him even hungrier. He took his first bite and said, "It's amazing." At that moment, an elderly man sitting next to him said, "Are you a tourist?" Alex smiled and replied, "Yes, I'm from Germany." Part 4. The elderly man smiled and said, "I'm Marco, a true Venetian. Are you enjoying our city?" Alex replied, "Yes, Venice is amazing. The architecture and canals are incredible." Marco nodded and said, "Many people think Venice is just for tourists, but locals still live here." Alex became curious and asked, "What is life like in Venice?" Marco thought for a moment and said, "It's very unique. We don't have cars, only boats. Our streets are water. But life here is expensive and sometimes the water rises." Alex said, "I've heard that Venice is at risk. Is that true?" Marco sighed and said, "Yes, the sea level is rising, but we hope our city will survive." Part 5. After dinner, Marco offered to take Alex back to his hotel in a gondola. Alex happily accepted. They walked to a gondola station, and Marco prepared a traditional gondola. The boat moved slowly through the narrow canals. Alex looked at the old buildings standing beside the water. Some of them looked very ancient. He asked, "How old are these houses?" Marco said, "Most of these buildings are several hundred years old. Venice has a long history." Alex nodded slowly and said, "It's incredible. It feels like traveling back in time." Marco smiled and said, "That's the magic of Venice. Every corner has a story to tell." Alex thought about how valuable this trip had been for him. Part 6. When they arrived at the hotel, Alex thanked Marco and said, "This was one of my best experiences." Marco laughed and said, "I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you come back to Venice." Alex rested at the hotel for the night and went to St. Mark's Square early in the morning. He was amazed by the grandeur of St. Mark's Basilica. The golden details and ancient mosaics were stunning. In the square, a flock of pigeons was flying around, and tourists were taking photos. Alex sat down and ordered a coffee. He felt like he was truly part of the city now. Next to him, a group of French tourists was discussing the city's history. Alex listened to their conversation and realized how much his cultural understanding of Europe had grown. Part 7. After his coffee, Alex decided to visit the Doge's palace. He bought a ticket and entered the historic building. The grand halls, frescoes, and magnificent architecture impressed him. The museum guide explained that this palace was once the center of power in Venice. Alex listened carefully to the historical stories. He felt like he was traveling through time. When he reached the Bridge of Sighs, he stopped and looked at the canal view. The guide said, "Prisoners crossed this bridge and saw Venice for the last time." Alex sighed and said, "This is the darker side of the city's history." Then, he continued walking, determined to make his last night in Venice unforgettable. Part 8. On his last night, Alex decided to attend a classical music concert. He bought a ticket and went to the La Fenice Theater. The grand atmosphere of the venue impressed him. When the music started, he closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the violin. He felt like he was at the heart of Italian culture. It was an unforgettable moment. After the concert, he walked by the canal. The water was calm, and the city lights reflected on its surface. He thought about how much this trip had taught him. With a smile, Alex said, "Venice, I will never forget you." The next morning, he took a train back to Germany, but the beautiful memories of Venice stayed with him forever. The end.